Hey friends, so good to see you. Pastor Nicole here. So glad you clicked on. Welcome to our midweek moment. I'm obviously not filming in my normal space today, but this week has been anything but normal. So we're rolling with it. We are going with it. I'm filming in my car. I have a meeting in a couple of minutes, so I thought I would just pop on and share a little thought with you today. This weekend we wrapped up our sermon series From Shepherd to King, the life of David, and we talked about how David encountered all of these follies in his life. His family life in particular was a mess, and it was just one thing after another, and it was really awful, but David still was able to do something incredible at the end of his life in laying the foundation, metaphorically, for the foundation of the temple to be built in Jerusalem. So he got all the materials ready and prepped his son Solomon to be able to build that temple. And kind of the thing I think is really interesting about David's story is that he wanted to build that temple. He asked God to build that temple. It was his idea, his vision, his thought, and it wasn't for him to do. And in our lives, I think that happens a lot. There are things that we want to do, there are visions that we have, there are dreams that we dream, and it's just not for us to do, but it might be for the next generation to do. And so there's some things that we can do to prepare the next generation to be able to do those things. Now, we talked a little bit about what we're doing at Willow Hill to vision for the future. We talked about some things that we can do in our personal lives, but I was thinking, like, even broader, there's things that we can do in our work life. You know, there are things that we can do to prepare for transition when we leave a job, whether we're retiring or we're moving on to something else. There are things that we can do to set up a solid foundation for the future. There are things that we can do to prepare that person to enter into that job well. There are also things that we can do if we want to not prepare that person and not lay a good foundation. Obviously, we want to, do the best we can to lay a good foundation moving forward. I guess depending on the circumstances, we might feel differently about that. But I'm really grateful for the pastors who have gone before me at Willow Hill, who have laid a solid, wonderful foundation so that when I transitioned in, it was way easier than it could have been, right? So I think about those kind of things. I think about that really amazing quote from Andy Stanley that says, the most important thing in your that you may do in your life is maybe who you raise. And so that idea of, like, maybe the most important work that God is going to do through us is not going to be something that we do, but it's how we raise a child who will do something amazing. Like, I love that thought of how God can use us to do something really amazing. And really, that's kind of what David did. I wouldn't say that he is probably the best father or that he did a great job in raising Solomon. I think Bathsheba probably did a great job in raising Solomon. But still that idea of laying the foundation for the future. But we can think about this in all sorts of aspects of our life. We can think about this in the life of our country and how we want to lay a strong foundation for future generations. And different ideologies, political ideologies, may think about that differently. But in the United Methodist Church, we are really committed to climate justice. And so we want to be thinking about what can we do now that's going to impact future generations, so they're going to have a planet to live on. They're going to have a clean environment to inherit. That's really an important thought in the life of United Methodists, and really, I hope just most people. Like, we want to take care of our earth and all that is on this earth. That's laying an important foundation for the future, not just future generation of people, but future generations of animals. So there's lots of things that we can be thinking about of this idea of leading forward, of paving a path forward, laying a strong foundation. And I think David's story really teaches us that even out of the craziest of follies, even out of the most nutso story, God can still produce something really great and wonderful. So if you look at the story of David's family, you're like, how could anything good come from David's family? They are a mess. They're like wanting to kill one another. They're seizing the throne. They just want power. But it is out of that same family that God raises up Solomon, who is known as a man full of wisdom, who is known as a man who was able to build this monument to honor God, a place where people would gather to worship and to sacrifice and to meet God. Pretty incredible. So I think it's just like a little bit of hope that we find in David's story, that no matter how messed up we feel or how terrible we feel like we've lived our lives, there is a possibility of God working in our lives if we continue to seek after God. So I hope as we wrap up David's story, there's at least a part of his story that has touched your heart. There's so much to his story that we just kind of had to gloss over. So I encourage you to read his story in the Bible. You can find it in 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st Kings, and 1st Chronicles. There's a lot in there. So take a look at it. And I hope that as you move through this series, that something has touched your heart, impacted you, taught you a little bit more about how to be the kind of person that God wants you to be. So I hope you have a great rest of your week. Don't miss this weekend. We have an amazing guest speaker. Our very own Nick Friedrich is going to be preaching. Super excited about that. Join us in person or online, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye.